Nation of Fitin10, it is day 19. We are almost 20 days in, so we're almost into, or I should say, out of the teens. We are running the we're running the second scan this week. And they start tomorrow, right? We're running scans Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So make sure you book your scan with me. www.calendly.com/trainonmain. Again, www.calendly.com/trainonmain. The link is also under the Fitin10 channel in Slack. Okay, you may have to scroll up a little bit, but it is there. So make sure you book your scan with me. If you can't get in at any of the time intervals that I've set, then please let me know, okay? All right, let's get to more of your feedback here. All right, so this person writes, okay, so this is under the heading, is there anything you'd like me to cover in this week's video series? I find that when I do the 6 p.m. Zoom classes, I feel my energy level is pretty low. My last meal would have been around noon. What types? Noon, that is pretty, 6 hours without eating, okay. What type of snacks, foods should I target, and when should I consume it? All right, so if I were you, okay, this is just me, but I would have a meal around around 3, and then I would eat something small, maybe an hour before the class. Okay, that's what I would do. Now, what would I eat before class that would be small? I would have something. I would basically have like half of a regular meal, essentially. Okay, so for me personally, I usually have an isobar or 1.5 isobars. It's a good mix of carbohydrates. You get some simple and some complex in there. You also get some fast digesting proteins, and it's also low in fat. So you're getting basically a food that's going to digest reasonably quickly. And this is, something that's going to be good before you train. But also the slower digesting carbohydrates too will give you a little bit more sustained energy. So I like to go with an isobar. You may not eat isobars at all, but if you haven't tried them, let me know. You should try them because they are quite good. You could do something like a smoothie because that will digest pretty fast. You could do a little bit of oatmeal. Oatmeal tends to digest slower, but it's, again, if you're having a little bit of it, it is certainly good for sustained energy, just because it's got such a low digesting rate. So having a little bit would be okay. Maybe with some protein powder, again, something that's going to digest quickly. Again, we're looking for foods, a combination of carbohydrates and protein here that's going to digest reasonably fast, unless of course you're eating like 3 hours before class. Okay, so what would be like an example of a smoothie? You could do like some of the suggestions in your booklet, like some sort of fruit with some protein powder, maybe some almond milk. That would be reasonable. Okay, again, I would consume this maybe about an hour before you train. All right, okay, hopefully that helps you. All right. This person writes, so this is under the category, is there anything you'd like me to cover in this week's video series? Please explain good and bad fats and the difference between HDL and LDL. Okay, how much time do we have here? Okay, we're doing good. All right, so good and bad fats. Well, for sure we know that trans fats are the bad fats. And we can make a good case for polyunsaturated fats being the bad fats. Now, most people, when they think of bad fat, they think of saturated fat, but there's no proof of that. There never has been any proof of that. This was something put out in the 1950s by the gentleman named Ansel Keys. And he put something out called like the seven country study or something like that. And he basically made his data fit his hypothesis. So you could look it up if you want, but it basically the whole idea behind it was he was trying to show a correlation between countries that ate a high saturated fat diet and heart disease, okay, or cardiovascular disease. And so he picked 7 nations that showed this, but he took out the nations that didn't fit his hypothesis. So there were other countries that were eating a high saturated fat diet and they weren't getting the heart disease, okay? So nonetheless, we know now that this is just nonsense, right? This is just not true, that saturated fat does this. There's also the notion that with saturated fat comes more cholesterol, or that high saturated fat diet increases cholesterol levels in the body. Again, there's no proof of this. There's certainly no mechanistic data. You may be able to find some people where we see this, but again, it's just correlative data, right? It's not cause and effect. Just because two things, go up at the same time, it doesn't mean that one is causing the other, right? So, but what we do know about cholesterol is that if you have too little in your diet, your liver will make more of it. If you have too much in your diet, the liver will make less of it. Okay, but coming back to your question here about good and bad fats, stay away from polyunsaturated. So these are your vegetable oils. Stay away from trans fats. Okay, now almost nobody's making products with trans fats anymore, with the exception of maybe like some of the junk food that's out there. When it comes to the better fats, and again, I don't really believe that there's per se good and bad fats, which, with the exception of maybe trans fats. There's just sort of better fats to have, right? So we want to get more of the stuff that's closer to saturated fat. So monounsaturated and saturated fat would be the better fats to have. So, why saturated fat? Well, it's a more stable fat. It's less prone to oxidation, less carcinogenic. So these are the fats especially that you want to cook with. So, like coconut oil or butter. There are some monounsaturated fats you could cook with. But I would always go with the most stable fats to cook with, and that's, like I said, saturated fat is the best for that. In terms of differences between, so I should probably just say what are the bad fats. Bad fats, again, are those vegetable oils. So sunflower oil, safflower oil, what else would be polyunsaturated? Canola oil, palm oil, these types of things. These are very, very high in I'd have to actually double check palm oil. No, I don't think actually palm oil falls into that category, right? But canola oil, sunflower oil, safflower oil, monounsaturated, we're looking at more like olive oil, macadamia nut oil. But generally speaking, stay away from the vegetable oils, the oils that are extracted from seeds or vegetable oil. Corn oil, of course, stay away from that. Okay, these are all highly polyunsaturated. And what is the difference? Okay, please explain the good and bad fats and the difference in HDL and LDL. Okay, so HDL and LDL. So these are proteins, by the way. These stand for high density lipoproteins and low density lipoproteins. These are protein carriers. They carry cholesterol around the body. The idea here is that HDL basically helps the body rid cholesterol, and LDL builds up cholesterol in the body. I don't know if this is true or not. I'd have to see the mechanistic data behind it. Even if it is true, there's no evidence that cholesterol is bad for you. In fact, if you look at every cell in the body, it's made up of some level of cholesterol. The brain is mainly cholesterol. There's certainly no mechanistic data to show that cholesterol is bad for you. And again, I've mentioned this before. I think maybe I mentioned this already in this video. I don't even remember, to be honest with you. But your liver is a primary culprit for either producing. Basically, your body can see how much cholesterol is in your bloodstream. If there's too little, it will produce more. Okay, your liver will do that. If there's too much, the liver will downregulate and not produce as much. Okay, but there's no mechanistic data to show that cholesterol is bad. So I'm still now that's not to say I'm not saying it's not bad. I'm just saying there's no evidence to show that it is. So I'm very, very skeptical. I'm even skeptical of LDL. LDL is known to be bad. These are bad cholesterol carriers because supposedly they're supposed to get built. These are the lipoproteins that tend to build up in the walls of the arteries. Again, have we seen mechanistic data of this? No. Are we just going by correlation? Probably. Okay, so be very, very careful with this. When it comes to myself, I don't look at cholesterol, and I've had my cholesterol checked many times. I don't pay attention to cholesterol. I pay attention to the fats I eat, but I eat certainly a large percentage of my fat is saturated and monounsaturated. I don't have any issues with my LDL or HDL, okay? Or supposedly there's issues with those if they're at a certain level. But I'm just one person, so maybe that doesn't mean anything. We do know that certain people, there is a small percentage, I think it's less than 25% of people, they will see an elevation in both HDL and LDL, so good and bad cholesterol carriers, when their food intake is just generally higher. Okay, so this is not just fat intake, this is carbohydrate intake, that type of thing, okay? This seems to be more of a genetic thing with people. And whether it's an issue or not, what we tend to see is it's more of a multi-variable system, right? So generally people that have cardiovascular disease are people that have high blood pressure, they have high blood glucose levels, high insulin levels, they tend to be overweight, okay, carry high amounts of body fat. A lot of C-reactive protein in the body, so this is an inflammation marker. It's multivariate. We generally don't see somebody with one of these issues and then they have cardiovascular disease. So I think that this is again multivariable, and I think it's largely lifestyle related. Okay, man, I'm at 11 and a half minutes here. It's hard to make these videos short. Sorry. Okay. It's hard for me, okay? So there's a lot to say on this. So, and there's more to this question. Which oils are better used for frying or used on salad? Okay, so I'll talk about this more tomorrow, okay? And I'll probably repeat a lot of what I said, but this is a very good question. And once again, we just don't see any perhaps what you have in your mind as bad fat and good fat really is not the case, okay? There's no evidence of this, okay? All right, let's get the message of the day. The message of the day is a very simple one. Progression, not perfection. Progression, not perfection. So if you are not perfect in this challenge, and I know probably the majority of you are not quote perfect or near perfect, that is okay. So what I want you to focus on is progression, okay? And of course, this doesn't just apply to the challenge. This can apply to other aspects of your life. Focus on, pick one thing and then try to make it better, okay? That's what I would do. So if you're off in multiple things, pick one of those things. I would say your diet, okay? Try to make it better, okay? Try to work within the numbers that I gave you. Focus on improving, okay? Focus on progression and certainly not perfection. And I will talk to you all very soon. Okay, positive energy, positive vibes. Believe in yourself. For the love of God, see you. For the love of God, see you? No, for the love of God, give some gratitude. I'll talk to you all soon. See ya.